All right, coming in on our NHL draft rankings at number 20 from the USHL and the Chicago Steel, it's Michael Hage.
Yeah, Michael Hage, this guy puts up points, Ross. There's no debating that. In the USHL, like you mentioned, a Mississauga native. So we're seeing a trend, Ross, of Canadian kids choosing not to go to the CHL, but rather go the USHL college route. That's something to keep an eye on here as we move forward. But like I mentioned, puts up a lot of points. 54 games with the Chicago Steel, 33 goals, 42 assists, good for 75 points. So 75 points in 54 games. You got to love that. He had 4 points in 4 playoff games. He's committed to the University of Michigan. I'm a little cloudy on whether he's going to go there next year or the year after. I've heard kind of reports of both, so we'll see how that goes. But Ross, this is a guy with a lot of skill that I think maybe teams are a little bit down on because he did have a major shoulder surgery last season that only allowed him to play 13 games. And I think that stalled him from coming out of the gates flying. And it took him a little while. He had a much better second half of the season than he did first half. So that might have soured some scouts on him. But I think he has major upside.
Oh, offensively, when you watch his tape, like the hands stand out right away. He is a magician with the puck, great in transition. How many plays, Pills, he started either his own blue line or into his own zone, and then he's able to, boom, in the blink of an eye, he's speeding through neutral ice. And I think that he's going to be a huge hit wherever he goes because the fan base is going to get to watch him develop on a more steadier pace. And as you mentioned, missing as much time as he did, I don't think it's the worst thing in the world for him to defer to Michigan 2025 fall. And we'll see what happens with that. But I can tell you, Scott Wheeler's higher than anyone else on him. 15th overall on Scott Wheeler's board, 17th on Chris Peters. Oh, I missed the 2 there. 12 on McKean's. 21 for Craig Button, 24 for Elite Prospects. And I always find it interesting when Bob McKenzie / what the NHL GMs think has him way lower than consensus. He's all the way down at 36 on Bob McKenzie's most recent list. Michael Hage is a 6'1", 188-pound center that shoots right and is, I'd say, transition's probably the number one area where he exceeds in his game.
Now, the one thing to consider, though, Ross, with Bob's ranking being as low as it is here, is that's the oldest ranking of all of these, right? Like, when's that Bob ranking from?
I can tell you in just a moment.
Because most of there are other guys, like especially Wheeler, Pronman, EP, like these are very up-to-date rankings.
So Bob McKenzie put out a top 15 in May during the NHL draft lottery, but because Michael Hage is not in the top 15, he's somewhere below, but everything below that for Bob is from January.
Yeah. So like I mentioned, Michael Hage, he had his best play after January. So I think that's you got to take that with a grain of salt because there's a reason why all these other scouts are so much higher than Bob because Michael Hage had a huge end to his last year. In the highlights I watched, Ross, he's nicknamed the Viper from the broadcast crew over in Chicago. So that's a pretty cool nickname. He's excellent at entering the zone, like you mentioned. He can use his combination of speed, stick handling, and playmaking abilities. So you never really know how you can try to defend Michael Hage when he comes into the neutral zone and trying to get into the offensive zone. I really think this guy's got a good ceiling. Like he's got a nice mid-range wrister as well. He's very creative with the puck. When you score 33 goals and have 42 points in 54 games, it shows you're a dual threat. So I just think there's a lot of different things to like about him.
And there's still some things to work on as well. Can kind of find himself maybe not attacking the net as much as some scouts would like, but I think you're going to find a two-way centerman here eventually once he gets into his own at the NHL level, but a hardworking guy who can skate. He's long and his puck handling skills are exceptional. He himself in the Elite Prospects draft guide, they've got a quote from him saying he likes guys like Matthew Barzal and Jack Eichel because they're lengthy, they're long and creative, can make plays. So he's a guy who's going out there every single shift, he's not looking to just make the safe play always. He's looking to make a play that can put his team at a huge advantage in the offensive zone. So I'm a huge fan of the player. I think if your team just drafted him, he's going to be I don't know if he's ever going to be like the top guy in a top six, like on a line, but he can certainly, if he's got the right winger with them, I think that could be a deadly combo. If you maybe get a shooter with him, because he's going to open up so much space with his kind of flash and his ability to move with the puck. So I think if you put him with a shooter, you could really have a nice combination in a second line role at the NHL level.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think he's a middle six projection. Um, like I mentioned, I really do think his injury kind of stunted his rise in the draft rankings here, as we're seeing from the recent rankings compared to the older ones here. I think he's got a really high ceiling. Ross, I like this player, but I don't think he's going to be in the Sens range. I think he's going to go in the late teens or early 20s. If the Sens are going to be interested in a guy like him, they're going to have to trade up, which I don't anticipate them doing.
He did undergo shoulder surgery, which is why he missed
Yep.
last season. We know that sometimes it takes even a little bit longer once you're back to feel the puck and get back to the level that you were before. So what's the amount of stars then?
So I got him at 3.5 stars.
Yeah.
I think he's a good player. I think you're going to get a lot of upside with him, but I just don't think he's in the Sens proper range to take a true shot at him here.
Was not invited to Team Canada's U18s. What do you make of that?
Yeah, I don't know, Ross. I'm just gonna chalk that up as just simply getting ousted by better players. Like I'm not looking at him and saying, all right, he wasn't good enough. I just think there was better players. And who knows, Ross? Maybe this is a little bit of hockey politics being like, huh, weird that you decided to go to the USHL, not stay in the CHL. We're gonna take some of the CHL guys ahead of you here. I'm not saying that's what happened, but that could play a part. Who knows?
Well, we've seen that the other way for years at the World Juniors for Team USA. They really lean towards their
Yep.
obviously USNTDP guys and their college guys before looking up to the OHL and other Canadian leagues. Michael Hage would be an awesome pick at 25, but like Pillsy said, I don't think he's a guy you trade up for with the talent around him. I think there's a lot of guys who are similar in terms of either upside or where they're at in terms of position, handedness, all that. But I do think that Michael Hage is going to make a team happy there in that 12 to 20 range, I think is when you're going to see him go off the board. Michael Hage with an average rank of 21.4 comes in at number 20 on our Locked On Senators NHL draft rankings.